You know, the body can teach us a lot. So what I'm going to do to make up, instead of trying to jiggle diaries around, we'll have an extra session here. So the week that we finish, the 8th of March, we'll come back for the extra session. So we get the full course. Yeah, so I'll remind you at the end. Right, so quite a nice intro to the role of the body and the mind and how they work together and how one affects the other. You know, emotional stuff will sit in our bodies and cause us illness or cause us to have less than productive time. But we can affect at all levels. So using this idea of the T process, how our thoughts and beliefs and our emotional state and our feelings and our actions and the behaviour of our body can affect each other for either positive or negative. And I'm going to introduce you to the ABCs today. I'm only giving you a little bit of an insight into things like cognitive behavioural therapy. I mean, I do one-to-one therapy, but obviously in this course, I can't go into huge depth. I'm just introducing you to the concepts. But before we talk about our ABCs, I just wanted to to introduce people to the concept of the importance of nostrils in breathing and nostrils in our mental state. Just, if everybody can just check, close your mouth and just breathe in and out through your nostrils. And then close one nostril off and breathe in and out through that a few times. Just to get an idea of the flow, of the openness of that nostril. And then close that nostril off and do it through the other one. So who has one nostril that's more open than the other? Yeah. You guys don't? No, both the same. The right one, yeah. So most of us have one nostril that's more open than the other. And my right one's more open as well, which is good, because that's good for teaching. We're in a mental state that's more ready for teaching when our right nostril's open, funnily enough. So nostril dominance is to do with the circadian, or the ultradian or the circadian rhythms of the body. And for people who are well balanced, for people who say do a lot of yoga or meditation, the nostrils swap over every 90 minutes to 2 hours. So you check your nostrils, I mean, I don't know where your nostril is in the process, but you check your nostril 2 hours later, the other nostril will be open and the other one will be blocked. And the body swaps over. So that's just what the body does. But anxiety and depression are two particular states where that sequence has got way out of balance. So with anxiety, I always have to just remember, I'll get my lefts and rights mixed up. But with anxiety, our right nostril is predominantly open and our left nostril is predominantly more blocked. You know, if we were to kind of measure it throughout the hours of the day, it wouldn't be an equal balance. For depression, our left nostril is generally more open and our right nostril is more blocked. So this is one of the ways, one of the many, many ways that we can start to affect the mind by controlling and regulating nostril dominance to kind of bring it back more into balance. So in your workbooks, I don't know if you have them with you, on page 10 in week 4, it's asking which nostril is related to which part of the nervous system. And the left nostril, if we talk about the left nostril first, which is the one that's kind of more open in depression, you know, that's only, you know, excess. But in general, the left nostril is related to the parasympathetic nervous system, so the relaxed side of the nervous system. The left nostril is associated more with introversion, with low energy, low motivation. The left nostril is more associated with the body, mind, and the emotions, so it's more emotional state. Tends to be cold, tends to introduce feelings of more sensitivity to cold. And the left nostril is associated with the right brain hemisphere. So although brain hemispheres aren't as black and white as people often think, it's the right brain hemisphere that's generally more predominant in a state of depression. Anxiety is the opposite then. So anxiety is right nostril dominant. Anxiety is the rejasic, kind of highly active, dynamic state, hyperactive, so lots of fast thoughts, escalating. So it's left brain then. When the left brain gets more out of control, the right nostril is more open, anxiety. We get this overwhelming sense of out of control, more fearful state. And we're scattered and we're unfocused with that high sense of energy. So it's more extroverted. So that's the kind of the difference between the two nostrils. So obviously the ideal is to be balanced. And to be balanced isn't that both are the same openness. Balance is that they're swapping over at regular intervals. And we're going to do a practice later on to balance the nostrils. The key ways that we can balance the nostrils are through regulating the breath and also through the position that we lie on. Because obviously, to go to sleep at night, which nostril do you think we need to be open? If I've said left nostril is more introverted, more the kind of lethargic, low motivation, low energy state, and the right nostril is the anxious, hyperactive, dynamic state. Which nostril do you think would be better to be open when we start to go to sleep? Yeah, left nostril. So it's one to look for really. I know I tend to. And if when you go to bed, your left nostril isn't more open, that's probably when we have that difficulty getting to sleep. You know, we can be a bit anxious and the mind's overactive. So the best way to do it is to sleep on your right side. So if you sleep on your right side, it encourages the left nostril to be more dominant because it's to do with pressure in the armpits. So another way that we can swap over nostril dominance is to stick our hands underneath the opposite armpit and things. So it's quite amazing what the body does. So go to sleep when the left nostril's open. You'll go to sleep better generally. So obviously then it's just another example of how actions in our body and the way we breathe and how things are going on in the body can affect the mind and affect our ability to think in certain ways, our cognitive distortions or our cognitive powers really. So I wanted to introduce you to the concept of the ABCs, learning your ABCs. And it relates to this handout, which I think most of you have picked up the handouts. There's two handouts. The Enhancing Performance handout, which there's an ABC across the top. So last time we were together, we learnt about thinking skills and thinking errors, didn't we? We learnt about stress-inducing thinking and stress-enhancing thinking or stress-alleviating thinking. So we learnt about how basically a lot of, the negative states that we get ourselves into, whether that's fearful or anxious or that hopelessness that depression brings, is to do with our thinking. So this kind of just takes it a step further in that it looks at, usually there's something that triggers our thinking, and we call that the activating event or adversity. So we have this activating event or some kind of adversity, and that usually triggers our kind of escalating, performance-reducing thinking patterns. We have then, if we leap to C is the consequences of that thinking. And by the way, if you need a block to sit on, just help yourselves or shift around to make sure you're comfortable. But C are the consequences of essentially the consequences of that event or adversity, which could be anxiety, worry, drinking more, withdrawing from people, smoking more, avoidance, depending on what it is, but just some ideas of the kind of consequences of that particular event. It could be an internal event, something that we've started to worry about. It isn't. It's in your books a little bit, which it asks you to write what ABC stand for in your books. So I'm kind of talking about it more. I haven't got a handout, but we just need to remember that A is the activating event. That's why if you bring your workbooks with you, we would write it out, you see. So A is the activating event or adversity. C is the consequences of that. The handout that relates to it is this one here with the table. So if you can see the middle column there is the C. So the consequences are the emotional, behavioural and physiological reactions we have to that particular problem that we're presented with or event that's caused us some negative feelings. So the consequences are our feelings, our emotional state, our behaviour as a result of something that's presented itself to us. Are you keeping up with this? Am I explaining it? Okay.
It's all right today, but tomorrow I've forgotten it.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of on this handout. Yeah, it's kind of, maybe I just need to have a handout for it, but it's kind of on this sheet where we talk about the A being the target problem, the B being the, well, I haven't talked about B yet, and the consequences, the behavioural, emotional, physiological reactions. So it's kind of on that. I perhaps need a separate handout just for that, you're probably right. So we have something that happens to us, and then there are consequences to that. It causes us to feel, behave, think, or be in a certain way. And in the middle, the thing that kind of causes that, because quite often we think, this has happened to me and it's made me feel really bad. But the thing that actually causes us to feel bad is the B in the middle, yeah? Our thinking, our beliefs. They have the ability to transform the consequences into something much more productive, much less negative. Okay, so that B in the middle, which is thought, we did that with the stress-inducing thinking last week. Thoughts and beliefs. And of course, beliefs are the big humdingers. The beliefs are like the iceberg behind the thoughts. So the thoughts might be the tip of the iceberg, but what causes the way we think is the beliefs underneath them. Okay. So one of your handouts is on something called limiting beliefs. And the big iceberg beliefs, the ones that are deep beneath the surface that cause us to overreact, that will throw us into anxiety, that will throw us back into depression, are what we call limiting beliefs, particular beliefs, these kind of core negative limiting beliefs. Other beliefs may cause us problems or they may enhance our lives, but the ones where we have a really overreaction to, it's a sign and a symptom of we've got some real core limiting belief underneath that. Yeah. So the handout on limiting beliefs is for you to read and have a think about outside of this class. But I wanted just to spend a tiny bit of time on this chart. So if you look at this handout, Enhancing Performance, we haven't got time in class to do it today because I do want to move on to the yoga practice. But this is one for you to have a go at outside of the class. Maybe it's, if some of you are having emotional well-being support in the sessions, they tend to do cognitive behavioural. This is very much cognitive behavioural therapy, this. Or I do one-to-one therapy to explore it in more depth. But it's introducing you to it, and it is quite amazing. Once you're aware of this, how much you can start to work on yourself anyway. So if we just look at this chart, so you see across here we've got the ABC, the first 3 columns are your ABC. So, and I've given an example, I've listed out an example. So if we just look at the column A, this particular example is somebody anticipating arriving late for an important meeting, yeah, or me last week having to cancel at last minute. So somebody arriving late for an important meeting. So this is the target problem, the activating event, the adversity. It hasn't happened yet, they're worrying about it. So it's about to happen and it's something in near future that they've started anticipating already. If you go then to column C, so this particular person is anticipating arriving late for an important meeting, perhaps they're stuck in traffic or something. Go to column C. The consequences, which is what C stands for, the emotional, behavioural, physiological reactions, are that they're getting stressed and anxious, that they have high levels of anxiety, that they are angry at themselves, that they're driving fast and not concentrating, and that they perhaps have palpitations, that they're more aware of their heartbeat and are feeling sort of a faster heartbeat, even palpitations. So these are just a few of the sort of consequences of that particular event, yeah? And what's in the middle, and again, it's a bit like the sits and sats that we did. I don't know if any of you, because your homework was to go away and have a practice of that, wasn't it? And when we first start doing these things, we go straight from A to C. We go straight from worrying about this meeting and then cascading into a highly anxious state. And that is certainly what anxiety tends to do. We go into what's called a very associated state. We're just completely consumed with those feelings. So we can't even begin to think what the thoughts were. So it's a bit of a process of practicing, unpicking the thought stream, because it's like ticker tape. Those thoughts go so fast. So we have to kind of go back and spend a bit of time to think, okay, what was I thinking to have caused that reaction in me? And so some examples here were, I must arrive on time. I must arrive on time, otherwise it'll be the end of the world. You know, catastrophe thinking or whatever. This is going to look terrible. I've blown my chances of a bonus. I'm going to look so nervous. It means I'm going to lose my job. Then I'm going to be homeless and I'm going to lose everything. You know, it cascades down into this thinking. I've added to it a bit there. But unpicking some of the thoughts behind it. So those are very much thoughts. There isn't a belief that's uncovered there. Beliefs are a bit deeper. They're a bit harder to get to, actually. You know, in the work that I do, therapy with people, I look for something called a prime concern. You know, and this prime concern might be, I must be perfect, otherwise no one will love me. And if someone's running that program, my God, they're going to have problems in their life. You know, but that's you know, takes a little bit of effort to get to that belief, and it's quite a beautiful process to kind of just clear it out, let it go, change it into something else, and then that belief, when it's changed, will change a lot of the thinking anyway. But at this stage, cognitive behavioural therapy works on a more superficial level, actually, by we can learn to change our thinking. It often doesn't address the underlying problem, which is kind of still there. We can still cover it up by changing the way we think, and that will do us a lot of good anyway. But the difficult bit is getting to the B, because we go straight from A to C. Is that clear? And we get caught up in that, don't we? Consumed by it. So it's kind of stepping back a little bit. And what we call developing in yoga and meditation in Buddhism, we call it the witness mind. So we step back, we pull ourselves out of that mire of emotion and kind of rise above it and think, okay, what was I thinking? What was my thought process that got me into that state? So the beliefs and thoughts in the middle. And then on this chart, if you go to the fourth column, performance enhancing thoughts, this is this person having an attempt at changing the thoughts into something more realistic, more fair, more productive. So, although I say I must arrive on time, realistically I can't control the world. You know, if this was a result of a traffic accident and a traffic jam, and they're running a belief of a thought of I must arrive on time, actually who says I must? You know, who says I must when this is out of my control and I couldn't control the accident? I may be late, but it's not the end of the world. It's unlikely that I'll be judged on one event. So this is one event. Most of the time I'm always on time. It's highly unlikely that anyone's going to judge me as a failure on one event. And also, you know, as I start to think about this, I doubt that they'll even notice. It's a meeting that's quite informal. Sometimes people arrive late, possibly. So I can take the time now in this traffic jam or whatever it is to use my relaxation skills to kind of relax me down a little bit more. And regarding the driving fast, noticing that behaviour, if I drive like this I could crash, so I better slow down. So much more productive ways of thinking. But it's kind of noticing that we've got caught up in the emotions of it and are in that state. Taking the helicopter view to kind of think, okay, what am I thinking to do that? And then change the thinking. And then the consequences of changing the thinking then, the final column, are we stay much more focused and on the task, we drive safer. And then when we get to the meeting, you know, if the meeting can't be extended, I can just start to think about what items I can leave out of the meeting or how I can reprioritise the meeting. So start to think more productively. So the consequences are much more about staying calm and relaxed and certainly not driving dangerously. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's going straight from A to C, looking at the beliefs in between that have caused that, changing the thoughts and or beliefs. Usually need a bit more help to change beliefs. So that there's a much more new, effective way to solve the problem. So that might be one that you want to have a go at too, particularly introducing this third concept of the C, because we did the A's and B's last week really. We did the stress-inducing thinking, stress-enhancing thinking. We had an event, I can't remember what it was. I mean, I used an example, didn't I, of an event and then the thoughts that go with it. So we're just introducing the idea of the physiological and behavioural consequences of thinking errors, really.
So is there